Welcome to the Hub Tribe, the podcast from our HubSpot community, where we most of the times do it in Swedish, but some of the times we do it in English, like today. So we have a friend across the pond, basically on the bit further down into Europe from Denmark. We have Lucaas as a guest, and I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and then we'll basically jump into today's episode, which is not surprisingly going to be focused on how to maximize your usage of HubSpot as a platform. So, Lucaas, very welcome to the podcast. Give me a few background words on who you are and which company you're with and what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. My name is Lucaas. I'm sitting as head of marketing and head of revenue operations here at TimeLog. And what I'm doing on a daily basis, especially in the revenue operations team, is to focus on how to utilize and optimize our use of HubSpot, but also to automate and strengthen the processes that we have in the different teams across TimeLog.
Perfect. And you have been using HubSpot for a few years. Before you started using it, you did basically not know what it was, or kind of you heard of it, but you never worked in it. So how many years have you been a user? Because you're kind of the go-to guy within your company today, right? The admin guy in terms of HubSpot. So how many years have you? Did it take you to become the HubSpot guru in-house?
I think I've been using it for almost 3 years now. And previously I didn't know anything about it. But it's been an ongoing process where we started working in the sales hub and in the marketing hub. And then when being in sales and collaborating with marketing back then, it was a lot of training and a lot of curiosity that led to it. So I think around 1.5, 2 years, and then suddenly we stand here today and have implemented it all. Yeah.
How many of you are how many users do you have in the portal, give or take, in terms of all the hubs basically? How large of an organization do you have today?
We are just around 70
Yeah.
today. And actually everybody is in HubSpot to some extent. Even our
Okay.
bookkeeper is going in there to get provision overview for the sales department and so forth. So everybody's in there.
Nice. So I'm thinking 3 years. How, like, you didn't know anything basically about HubSpot when you started to work in the tool. Like, what was your experience when you logged in the first time and people told you this is HubSpot, this is where we do our sales and marketing? What was the first feeling and experience? How did you? Yeah, tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I think the first experience was there's a lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot here. And I think for me, that is a trigger for curiosity. So it's just like, okay, now I need to figure it all out.
Yeah.
And fairly quickly by my colleague who helped me getting onboarded, I also gotten to know the HubSpot Academy. So I went directly in there, took a lot of courses to starting to understand how do I get around in this big system, but otherwise just try and error and been like playing around, making a lot of mistakes, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also good learnings.
In terms of mistakes, are there any warnings or heads up you could give the listeners? Like, if some of the listeners might actually not have HubSpot, they might be interested in potentially investing in HubSpot as a platform. What will you give them in terms of advice when they think about doing this?
I think I will go back then to December last year when we chose to go with the Service Hub and move our CMS as well. I think definitely choose the right partner to help you get implemented. We spent a lot of time on it. At first, we thought we could do it ourselves, but no, not at all. Get some help out there and get some help from some experts. And that is basically through all of it. Because the try and error when working in a database, I think we have 140,000 companies in there that we're working with on a daily basis. Really be aware of what you're doing and make sure that you have an expert who can help you become that expert internally.
So I think this is interesting. And just a disclaimer: we're not the partners who helped you to onboard or get started with HubSpot. But and that's the thing with this podcast. We have guests and companies who are using other partners or doing it by themselves. So I think that's a bit more valuable for the community. But having said that, in terms of if a new company would look for a partner, what kind of support would you recommend them to seek in a HubSpot partner, and what could they basically do by themselves? How should they be thinking
I think
from your
like
experience? Definitely,
yeah,
obviously,
from
yeah,
our
yeah.
experience, what we did that we basically had two pillars that we were working with when having to choose a partner. First pillar was a culture match of the team
Mm,
behind at the partner. Um, Also for me, I was basically the hero for HubSpot saying, okay, now we need to get implemented with all these hubs. So I was keen on it, but I had a team at backend who was using different software today. So we need to find the right match there in order to also convince them and to make the champions internally. And then a big factor for me was the approach to how you see HubSpot. So do you see HubSpot as a joint ecosystem where you need all the different hubs to work together? Or if you're implementing Service Hub, for instance, are you only looking at the service part of it, or actually taking into account how might that affect the Sales Hub? How might that affect the account executives when sitting with all the sales? Can they then see the tickets? How do you make the correct flow? And so forth. So I think like both sides of it, and then some who has experience with your current tech stack. So you're also able to
mm.
get the support there to do the right integrations and setup that you need.
That's really good advice. I see personally the clients who have had the most value, have gotten the most value out of HubSpot is the ones who see it as a platform, as
Mm,
a customer journey meeting platform where you can interact. And as you said, the reason why we have you on as guest and why we had Telavox as guest as well is because you've understood that the platform thing with HubSpot is what makes it stand apart. Like
mm,
you could find CRMs out there, really competent CRMs. You can find marketing automation solutions. You can find platforms for managing your website and stuff. But to get everything together and to get all the information from one truth, one database, that's definitely one of the absolute biggest advantages with going with HubSpot. So what kind of results? So you said last December you started to use all the hubs basically.
mm.
So what kind of results have you seen now that we're looking back at the first 12 months when you've actually gone all in on HubSpot? Do you have any good examples on things that didn't work as well before and things that are working much better today?
Mm. Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes for us is the internal collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to be able to break down some of the silos, especially between the customer success team and the sales team. Um, so HubSpot has enabled us to have one joint platform to communicate, and there's less friction basically within the team. There's different friction now because now we want to optimize and we want to do things better. Um, but definitely less friction. And I had when we just moved, it was in June, I think, where we moved and fully went to the service hub, but doing all the prep for the past months and so forth. I had a developer who came to me and he was like, Lucas, this is actually good. It's working. I was like, okay, this is my
Yeah,
accomplishment. If I can get one of the developers who was really keen
yeah,
on the previous product saying this is
yeah,
good, I'm like, okay, fair enough. Now we found a good solution.
yeah. Did you have to sell this to management or like the C-level people in your company, or were they kind of on board from the beginning?
Um, I think it took half a year or something to sell
Yeah.
it in. I've been
Mm.
trying a lot. I've been really keen on HubSpot since I started, and I saw the ability to make one joint product, or one joint platform where we could actually work in, and also all the due diligence around. Because as you said before as well, there's many CRM systems out there, and there are many good
Yeah.
CRM systems. But also to understand where a TimeLog on the journey is HubSpot a
Mm.
scalable platform that we can grow within? How much
Yeah.
can we grow? What are the limitations and so forth? So there was a lot of back and forth. But at last they were keen on it, and the last feedback that I gotten is that it was a good decision to move
Yeah.
into HubSpot. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And what are the most common pushbacks you hear when you start talking about HubSpot like as a platform? What are the most common like things you get back from management in terms of that they might not want to go all in on HubSpot? What would be the reasons for that?
I think the biggest blocker have been, which is also one of the biggest things that we can actually get out of it, but is going all in one platform. So
Mm.
assembling both ticket sales and marketing in one platform and the risk thereof, and suddenly being able, if there's any breakdown or if there's anything, then I just need to use my HubSpot to find the data. Like I haven't had any breakdowns, which have been making any issues for us for the past 3 years, and we've been using
Mm.
Sales and Marketing Hub for 5 years before I came into the company. And
Mm.
there haven't been any major issues. So that was their biggest blocker. Like, what is the risk of assembling everything at one provider? But again, as we talked about earlier, it's also one of the biggest strengths that we can actually get out of it because we remove all the friction and we remove all that manual work that have been before.
Yeah.
Um, Even though there's a lot of good integrations platform where you can actually make the data flow and so forth work, it's just different working in the same platform. You have the same language and the same terminology that you're talking about. Um, so yeah, I think that's the biggest blocker.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hear this a lot as well, and that there might be a risk of moving everything into one platform. But again, I mean, you just said that you've been using HubSpot for like in the company has been using it for like 7 years, 8 years in total,
Mm,
and there has not been a single breakdown or issue
no.
where you couldn't access your data. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing. If you have a one platform where you collect everything, I mean, you need to make sure. And I mean, HubSpot when they started many years ago, I mean, they were like all new companies. There were issues, but now it's kind of. Um, Give me your take on the
Mm,
Sales Hub, and let's jump in between things because
mm,
uh, um, when HubSpot started from the beginning, it was a marketing platform, and
mm,
then eventually there was a CRM, and then this has evolved until now recently after the last inbound event this year they launched the prospecting view as one of the
mm.
things, and I think that is like the focus is obviously very much on Sales Hub in terms of developing and expanding this. What is your take on Sales Hub today as opposed to a few years ago when you onboarded? Like, do you have
Mm.
any features? So the prospecting view obviously is a big thing. What do you think about that? Are you using it in which way? And do you have any other features in Sales Hub that you're specifically interested in or have tried out?
Mhm. I think the Sales Hub, when I started and got onboarded here at TimeLog, was sufficient back then for us. Also for the maturity of where we were. It's
Mm.
definitely not what it is today. Just for the past half year, I think a lot of new features have come out. Some
Yeah,
really good features. I
yeah,
think the one of the biggest change for our head of sales, also for me in revenue operations, but also for the account executives in the day-to-day work is when you go into your deal overview, um, and you keep looking the pipeline, then suddenly you got those metrics on top where you get a
yeah,
summary of what you're looking into, and it's simple, nice overview. And the
yeah.
same for the sales analytics. The way that it have developed, um, have just made it easier for revenue operations and the data responsible at ours to suddenly to have pick and choose easy analysis and reports that we can just pull out.
Mm.
Um, and the prospecting part, funny enough, actually, we're not using it that much for the sales team, but we are going to use it for our implementation team and for
Mm.
our customer
Interesting.
success managers. Yeah. So
Okay.
we're moving over there, and then we say, okay, as a customer success manager, and now as a customer success manager's account was responsible for our existing clients and the sales processes thereof, and they're working more on an account-based approach, and thereby using the prospecting part as a
Mm.
dream come true. Like being able to have your schedule in there, being able to like categorize and identify not the sales process necessarily, but more the relationship that you have with the lead. uh, going onwards, that is really big. And I showed it a couple of months ago to our head of customer uh, growth and the one who's sitting with the CSMs, and he was just like, "We need this. We need it to work now." So that is something that we're working on now.
That's so interesting. It's I always think it's very interesting to hear different versions of. So obviously, I mean the prospecting view. People would think this is hunters, new business, like prospecting for new. I've had discussions with clients who are using it for account management, like key account management. Like we have clients, we need to upsell our current clients, we need to keep the relationship, and then as you're saying now, customer success to manage the. Have you? So a follow up question on that. Have you then? The lead like the lead property in which is basically not a property but it is a property, it's kind of confusing, it's not the lead status, it's the lead property in the prospecting view. Have you changed those stages as you're using it for customer success, or do you have, so for the ones listening now, for the maybe if you haven't tried it out, it's actually you have lead, you have new lead, you have attempting, you have connected, you have qualified. So there are a few standard phases in the property. Are you using those for customer success as well, or do you have like good relationship, connected, super like
Yeah,
tell me more
so
about that.
yeah. So we basically started out with the standard just to see, okay, is this working in practice? And that is also everything new coming into HubSpot. Let's try it out, see if it works. Let's not
Yeah,
customize it before it's working.
yeah.
And now moving into the phase where we need to understand, okay, what is the process actually? How do we make it recognizable for the CSM who's working with the customer so we adapt to their way of working? So that is the process that we're going through right now. And that is to make it like according to the process basically. So what is the CSM experiencing in their daily day? And how can we adapt that in the system? And I think that is also a thing from HubSpot. Like you can adjust so much in there.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
That is again for the listeners. If I would, I mean, we've just begun this episode, but I would say this is probably one of the best takeaways is to start with the process and to start with what you're trying to achieve, because during the almost 10 years we've been helping clients to get the most out of HubSpot, it's, I would say, like in 7 or 8 times out of 10, it's people are trying to use the tool and then find out what the process looks like, instead of having a process which you then start looking at how can we build this in HubSpot. So by, for example, you have 5 or 6 different steps in a sales process. So that is the process. How can we automate? How can we collect information in the different stages? How can we work in a smarter way from within our process? Not how can we map our process to do what HubSpot wants it to be doing, like in terms of lead stages and deal stages or whatever it is. So it's while on this topic, it will be super interesting to hear a bit more about. So you're using the platform, you're doing sales, you're doing marketing, sales, service. What does that process look like? We spoke about silos before, that when you started to use the platform as a whole, you've kind of eliminated silos. You have new frictions, but in a positive way when you're trying to optimize things instead. What is the process from, let's go from lead to deal, and then also like within customer success, what happens? Like high level, from beginning till end. What does the process look like, and how have you built this within HubSpot?
So starting in the marketing, there's for marketing, there is some it's hard to make it simple. But what we're using
Sure.
basically is that we're working a lot with the campaigns tool within marketing in order to structure and make sure that all of that is coordinated and so forth. And then we have set up the different parameters of our funnel. So we have the maturity stages where we're maturing the leads, which is basically subscriber, lead, and MQL. And then when turning from MQL into SQL, they pop up in a view for the SDRs where they have their day-to-day, where it's just a simple view and underneath the contacts tab where they have that one, where they're going to pick and choose depending on the market that you're responsible for. And then it basically goes into the work of an SDR. The SDR is working on it. They're using the task queues and have done with the naming of the tasks, basically done a structure of how you're working with those. Then first meeting is booked with account executive. A deal is created. So they're having a sales process in the sales pipeline with the deals and so forth. They are not there yet, but are going to use the prospecting part as well, but mainly the feed. A lot of them are using notifications when people are
Mm.
opening mails and so forth.
Yeah.
And then they work through the whole process. Then there's some different outcomes. Either first meeting moves forward, first meeting gets canceled, that's also deal stage, or it gets lost. Um,
Mm.
if it then moves forward and the deal is won, then automatically when a deal is won by an account executive and contract signed, then a workflow is automating a new deal created, but in a consulting pipeline, so the implementation pipeline.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
And then they take over. And then I think it's 10 different automated tasks which are generated for the implementation consultant. So we know, okay, we've been through the different steps. Um, and then they move it forward. They get signed as a customer. And then they basically move over to the service hub. And then they work with it there. And then they're categorized in different buckets of customers and so forth. And then they living and working in there until they move back into the customer success managers who's working with the upsells and so forth. So there's a flow back and forth between service and those. Um, and that is really simple explanation of how the flow is.
That is super interesting. I want to get. I have a bunch of follow-up questions. The first one is you said that you're naming the queues for the SDRs, naming
Mhm.
convention. To tell me a bit more about that. What are the criteria of naming the prospects or the leads in this queue they're working with?
So the thing is, basically, every single SDR have their own, and then they have some which also generate. So we have a single or a different aspect as well. That might be conversions or website visit or whatever it might be. Those goes into a joint pool, and then it says website visit X, and then they know, okay, what are we looking into, and it also says which pages have they visit, and then we take it from there. This is built in a workflow, then transferred into a task. For the single SDR working on it, it might just be FU as a follow-up. It might be book meetings or BM. Then you know, okay, now I need the single thing is just that I need to get a hold
Mm-hmm.
of him, book this meeting. He already agreed to it. It could also be cold, so you know you have some more. So you basically categorize the way that you're working with it with the naming of the different tasks.
Okay.
And we've been
Um,
trying. Sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. You've been
Yeah,
trying.
no, yeah, we've been trying to modify and make different queues. So basically, if I back when I was an SDR, if I just had one only for book meetings, could I just get them in there? But the transfer back and forth because there weren't that many tasks on a day-to-day basis, so it was we figured out it was easier and better to have one long queue, but you work on a daily basis. So you know what am I going into? You can start with all the ones for follow-up. You can start with all the ones where you have to send a sequence. You can have to so you know where you're starting, and then you start those as a queue when you start your sequences or your tasks.
Sequences.
Mm-hmm.
How are you using sequences today?
We're using sequences for the SDRs to structure a outreach. So it might be a series of different activities that could be calling. It can be validation of the lead, which is one of the first ones. When you go and you have to validate and make sure. And then you go through it. So it might be send an email, follow up with a call. If replied to the email, then it jumps further into the sequence. So it's basically a structured way of how to doing it. And
Mm.
then actually for the sequences for an SDR, when you do the calling, it's associated to a playbook. So when you do your calls, then you have a playbook that you run through. So let's say I'm an SDR in the Swedish market and I want to reach out. Then I have in there listed the different competitors that we're working with, or it might also be different systems that we're integrating with. Are you using Fort Knox, for instance? Yeah, we're using Fort Knox. Great.
Mm.
Then I know because it's a red ocean out there. There's a lot, but it makes it easy just to have a standard way of going through it. And then sequences we also using just in a mail set up for our new biz meetings, basically. So when having a new biz meeting, a sequence is started from an account executive who is starting it, modifying and personalizing it based on what you need to do. But there's some specific criteria, some prep before the meeting and some follow-up after the first meeting and so forth. And that is set up in a sequence and then sent out dependent on time from sequence sent, booked meeting, till the meeting is going to be held. And there's different length on the different sequences that we're using there.
There's a lot of super interesting things in here, and I get everything because I've been doing. I'm a super HubSpot nerd. I think the ones listening are going, yeah, playbooks, that's nice. The sequences sounds good, but what you just told me is this is nothing. This is not a thing you sit down over lunch and put this together and push a button. This is a back to process and think about what do you want to achieve with this and how much time do you want to save, because what you said right now is you're using sequences for lead validation. So just check it off. Is this a good one? Is this a bad one? That's basically, and for the ones of you who haven't tried sequences, it used to be a bunch of automated emails. There are some tools out there today who are doing exactly that. You import a list of 100 contacts, you have 5 emails sent out, and you spam the shit out of everybody. Excuse me for the language. It used to be like that. What it is today, is basically a step-by-step action plan for what you need to do. You could add automated emails in the sequence as you're doing, but you could also add, for example, the good one you had, like lead validation. Have we really checked that this is a good lead? Yes, we have. Okay, so then you're also doing, like, for prepping, there is a meeting booked, and account executive is having a meeting. Before the meeting, a sequence is sent out with information pre-meeting to the client. When there is a, correct me if I've misunderstood, but then when you've done the meeting, after the meeting, another email is sent out with follow-up information, and all of the process basically comes together. So you use sequences as kind of in between meetings and meetings booked and follow-up stuff, depending on like specific cases. I mean, I guess you're not automating 100% of them, but many of them to be able to do this. And then we have playbooks. So the playbooks is another thing. If you're not using this, if you're listening to this, not using playbooks, and this is available on a professional level and up. I don't know if do you have Sales Enterprise?
Yeah, we have
professional
enterprise all over. Yeah,
all over. Yeah. So Sales Enterprise also gives you the option to add a contact into a sequence automatically. You cannot do this if you have a sales professional. However, you can activate sequences, and you can use playbooks. And playbooks, as you're using it to find out about the competition, ask the right questions. It's kind of a checklist, a step-by-step guide. And again, if you have the enterprise level, I guess you're doing this, you can also, as you're answering the questions in the playbook, you can add properties to HubSpot directly. So let's say, am I talking to a stakeholder? Yes. So this person is tagged as a stakeholder. Do they have a budget to buy this? Yes. So this company is going to be tagged as somebody who has money invested in this right now. If you have a professional level, you can still use playbooks, but you can't add properties. You can ask questions, and you give you options of how to answer them. So you've just said that, like, so moving back just a few years, or even just 1 year on the Sales Hub, these are things, I mean, we normally if we go back 3 years or 4 years when the Sales Hub was initially launched, I had a really hard time when I went up against Salesforce or other CRMs as a partner. Today, it's I'd say it's 50-50, and actually it's leaning more against HubSpot when we're up against Salesforce. Depends on what kind of client they are. If they are a super complex, super global company, super enterprise with too much money to spend, they normally go with Salesforce. Otherwise, it's so competent now, Sales Hub. And then, as you said from the beginning, when you start connecting Sales Hub to Marketing Hub, to Service Hub, to everything, I mean, that's when the thing gets really, really nice in terms of saving time, automating stuff, making life easier for everybody involved.
Definitely. And I think that's the thing that we went for, and that is the thing that we bought into. Like, we can do all this, and Also the ease of use. I think
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
it. Yeah.
definitely. Are you and also another thing I want to raise with like the process and the pipeline. So you have your sales pipeline, then goes
Mhm.
into a consulting pipeline / implementation pipeline. And this is a question I get often from clients in connection to Service Hub. So you
Mhm.
said you have sales pipeline, you have a consulting pipeline, and then Service Hub is managed. So customer success are using Service Hub,
Yeah. So
or yeah,
yeah, customer success is using Service Hub. The thing for us, we have a, I don't know if it's different, but we have a setup where customer success is sitting with the CSAs, sitting with the support there, and then we have the customer growth team, which is sitting with the CSM. So it's kind of split up.
yeah.
But customer success here is sitting with the CSA and with the Service Hub.
So the customer growth team, are they
Mhm.
sitting with Service Hub as well?
Y- yeah, to some extent, they like, the thing is that we've gone into the aspect of everybody have to be able to be able to replace each other. So
Mm.
the different teams who have the depth of product knowledge, let's say customer growth and customer success, they need to be able to help each other. So the CSMs, for instance, or the implementation consultants need to have the knowledge of the Service Hub,
Hmm.
like sickness and anything. Then we can just jump in and then help. So everybody is is getting certified in the Service Hub as well to be able to go in there and support and help. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds really really smart to be able to cover for one another. But if you were
Mhm.
to like, if we were to be very very streamlined in terms
Mhm.
of, it would be sales in the sales pipeline. It would be the growth consultant, like the customer success growth
Mhm.
team in the consulting pipeline,
And
and
ad biz pipeline. So
yeah, okay,
ad biz. So there's new biz, ad biz,
ad
consulting
biz,
pipeline. Those are like
okay.
the deal stage or the deal pipelines. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Service Hub is used to manage support related stuff as it's supposed to
Yes.
be used, basically. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have? Are you also using the FAQ side part of Service Hub, and do you have a knowledge bank as well?
We're currently launching a knowledge bank, but also doing it for internal use. So both a
Mm,
public one, we migrating from a previous one, and then we're also doing an internal one for our own system. So that's going to be
all
great
right,
to see how that works.
that's super interesting. And you mentioned also that the playbooks is something you're potentially looking at to have for onboarding as well.
Hmm. Yeah,
Because
definitely.
yeah, and that was one of the takeaways from our recent HubSpot guest, Telavox Runa from Telavox. She said they have playbooks for basically everybody who's onboarding in the company. They have a playbook. So they
Mm.
just send them to the playbook. They just go through the playbook. They're so and the playbooks. I mean, you can add text, you can add images, you can add videos, you can add a bunch of different stuff. So as long as you follow the playbook and look at the videos and read the documents, you're going to be kind of onboarding yourself in most of the time. And if you have additional questions, you might have as you're doing internally, an FAQ part where you can go and find answers. It's a super, I mean, everything we're talking about now, and it's like, if you, I mean, if you hadn't understood it before, it's like it's saving so much time. It's automating things. It's making life
Yeah.
so much easier. And I mean, today in the world we live today, I mean, stress and not knowing where things are, that's potentially one of the biggest threats we have as companies today, I would say.
Mm.
And if you can get everything collected and in place, I mean, everything else becomes so much easier. But again, it's not the way that most of the companies are doing it. It's the other way around. It's not starting with a tool and pushing processes into the tool. It's starting with your team. It's starting with processes, responsibilities. Like from the beginning, this is our client. This is how we reach them. This is how they want to be communicated. So this is how we manage this internally. These are the teams. We've mentioned a few of them, like different pipelines connected to different team members, and in this case, I think it's a super good idea to have everybody responsible, just in case somebody is sick and can't do what they're doing. Somebody else can jump in and take their place as well. It's
Yeah.
very 360 in terms of responsibility as well. Cool. Super interesting. Is there which one of so you're like kind of working with all your revenue, responsible for revenue, you're head of marketing, like what is which hub is your favorite hub in terms of, let's talk automation, time saving, processes stuff. Which one do you like the most if you had to choose one, and why?
I think that's a tough question. That's a really tough
Yeah.
question. Um, I I think for the recent development, Sales Hub,
Yeah.
of what we gotten out of it,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I can't. No, I don't think I can say a specific. Like, there's so many opportunities in all of them,
Yeah.
and it's getting the most out of it, and depending on the team, basically. So what
Exactly.
process
Yeah.
is it that you want to accommodate? Then this hub is the best, or this hub is the best.
Yeah.
Um, but I think like the way also just to put some in there about like the workflows, about how workflows is being updated currently,
Mm.
that is like the whole automation part of it, how you
Mm.
it's way more agile than it been before.
Yeah.
And suddenly connecting all the hubs way easier. So
Do you have any examples on that when you're saying that the workflows are being like developed in a very interesting way? What do you mean by that?
mm, yeah, I think one specific action is that we have made it like it's not complex at all, but just a quite big workflows where we had I think we have 120 industries or so, and all those industries has to be aligned to a target or segment. Um, and before we just have different branches for all of them, and suddenly when having that workflow, the cleanup feature in the workflows just by
Mm.
magic can turn it around and make it way more simple.
Mm.
But also the menu structure and the explanations which are now there makes it way easier for me to get one who never seen it before to understand
Yeah.
this is how you can do it. And then suddenly I can get help from everybody basically, instead of
Yeah.
having to have one who actually knows what it's about and how to work in there.
Yeah, for sure. Are you using Operations Hub?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're using
Yeah.
it quite a lot for the data maintenance,
Mm.
and data quality. And then to some extent for the data sets, we've done like provision overview and so forth is calculated via the data sets, and displayed
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis for the reps. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Really cool. So basically, if we summarize this, what would be your, like we spoke about this in the beginning, but like if you have like two or three, these are my main, this is my advice to somebody who's actually looking into HubSpot and want to implement it and get going and working. Do you have a, like, these are the steps you need to take, this is the way you need to think to get it implemented in the right way, like to get the most out of what do you need to think about?
Mm, I actually came to think about something while we talked about it.
Yeah.
And I think what you've also been saying a couple of times now is that let's think about the process of what we want to obtain instead of being limited by the system. And
Yeah.
another thing is when having to do that change, now I've been doing it in I think 6 different teams, start by letting them know what the value is that they generate by all the
Mm.
data management, all the maintenance that they have to do. So if they understand the value of what they have to do,
Mm.
suddenly it makes your life easier when having to implement it, but also makes their life easier because they actually understand why they have to do what they're doing.
Mm.
Um, and then look at the process, look at it in a ecosystem together, understand the integration and the current setup that you have in your tech stack, and get the right partner. That is like crucial to make it work, at least from my side. Get a really good
Yeah.
partner where you find a culture fit, but you
Yeah.
also get a common understanding and advice in the direction and the maturity that you're on in your CRM system and platform.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I can't emphasize enough on what you just said again, like have a plan. I know first thing I tell clients when they start looking at HubSpot and ask a lot of questions about workflows and automation and stuff, I say, hey, let's grab a whiteboard, a really large one,
Yeah.
and let's just put everything down. Yeah, everything you
Hmm.
have like in your brain right now, you just get it out there, put it on the whiteboard, get your colleagues in the same room from the different departments, put it on the whiteboard. And what do you want to achieve? Like, what does the process look like? How can we optimize? How can we save time? What kind of information do you want to collect in the different phases? Like, how do you want to make your life easier by using a tool which can help you and not stop you? Like, a lot of the CRMs out there today are like, it's blinking red because you haven't filled out a specific field and nobody knows why you even need to fill it out and in which way you need to fill it out. I've been training so many sales organizations, and most of the salespeople are like, I'm never even going in. I have pen and paper because this freaking CRM makes me crazy. I don't have time. I have to meet clients, whatever it might be. But if you have a CRM which is working for you, and when you get those processes together after the whiteboard sessions, where you kind of, it all flows, like from marketing to sales to customer success back again, and upselling, cross-selling, like evangelist customers, whatever you want to call them. It makes you feel so good. So I think, and I totally agree with you there, and I've said it myself a few times, like, take a few steps back, grab a big piece of paper or whiteboard, get everything out there, and then decide, what do I want to optimize, and how do I want to optimize it? Who's going to do the work? Who's going to be responsible? What are the KPIs or the kind of the OKRs or whatever you're using, like, connected to this role? And how can we make this a priority for them and connect this to the company's priority? And maybe then you can start like digging into like workflows and automation in pipelines and stuff. And most of what people most of the times do wrong is they are so eager to just jump into the tool and start building stuff. I can't even remember how many clients during these years have contacted us with like a portal where everything is kind of like, we have 57 workflows, we have a lot of like properties and stuff, nobody's using it, please help us. And before you reach that stage, as Lucaas said, like, whether it's us at Struct Sales or whether it's another partner who knows what they're doing, like, reach out, bring in some help. And we do this ourselves. I mean, I do like some of the stuff we do, which is not related to HubSpot, but other things we could do by ourselves, but we bring in consultants as well, because you can't do everything yourself. And it's always good to have somebody giving you a few additional like insights. And I mean, the reason why we have this podcast episode and doing the recording now is because one of your colleagues reached out a year ago, roughly, and asked for help on LinkedIn. Like, is there somebody who wants to review our attribution reporting? And it would be nice to have a discussion. So I jumped on a call, and we had like a 30-minute call where I gave some insights and some tips, and then we jumped off. I think that's super valuable to have, as a kind of making sure that we're doing it in the right way, and not like, it's costs so much time and money if you do it wrong, and then you need to rip it open again. So go for the whiteboard, go for your brains, just put it out there, think about what you're trying to achieve, and then you can start building stuff. And when you do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong there, Lucaas, but when you do, start small. And like, don't go for 25 workflows and different properties, rebuilding everything HubSpot has set up as standard. Like, start small, and maybe you have some example from when you started to do this. Like, did you do pilots? Did you, like, what was the process like?
Actually, I'm getting better at it, because I also been like too eager to just getting started and getting it all in there. But actually getting better at starting to develop in a sandbox and develop it in there. Try it out. How does it work? What happens if I enroll all these contacts or whatever?
Exactly.
So we tried out there. But yeah, I think the biggest challenge is that we still have that eagerness. We still just want to do and just want to build. But I think, as you just said, Oliver, the thing about having that whiteboard, and for us, that can be a notepad, it can be a Miro board, it could be whatever. But just put it in there. Let's have a backlog, so we know, okay, when we want the great ideas, there's a lot in there. Let's go pick and choose, and then figure out which one makes the greatest value. But we are getting better at it, and we're getting more streamlined in terms of saying, okay, this is direction that we're going. As you say yourself, what is the OKRs? What is it that we want to obtain? How much manual work are we basically removing? Because that is the biggest issue. Like manual work, how much can we automate, but still obtain a good customer journey for the lead or the customer?
Perfect. Perfect. So as responsible for revenue operations, I do a lot of sales training. I do I actually published a book many years, like 2019, in value-based selling, and stuff. So I've always been interested in sales teams and selling. That's kind of my main thing. In terms of RevOps, this is kind of a new thing. Like, it used to be sales marketing, then we had the silos, and then we have RevOps, which is supposed to be pulling everybody together. Like, how do you see, and this is nothing to do with HubSpot, I'm just curious, seeing that you're working in the role you're working in, how do you see the sales role evolving in the upcoming, like, 2 to 3 years? What is a sales rep and account executive in 3 years? What has changed in that role compared to what they're doing today? Like, we could go back to predictable revenue in like 2001, 2002, which is, this is fascinating. I just saw somebody post really large newspaper, American newspaper, post about predictable revenue. This is the way you achieve growth, and it's moving into 2024. Super interesting that this is still a thing. So having said that, like, going from SDRs to BDRs to account executive and everything, like, what does the upcoming 2 to 3 years look like for an account executive? Like, what do you need to think about if you're in sales? What's going to be happening? We have AI, we have everything is like exploding right now. What's your thoughts?
I don't know if I'm a little controversial on this part.
I love it. Let's be controversial.
But for me, AI is definitely going to change stuff. It's definitely going to remove some of the manual work. But what I was doing myself, and now the sales reps here at TimeLog, what they're doing and the value that they create, that is the human interaction that we have together. So the way that we communicate, the thing about being able to see each other when we talk, and the facial expressions that we can actually see and talk to a human person, that is going to make a difference. So I think for us in the next 2 or 3 years, what's going to happen is that we're going to be way more out there with the customers and actually being there in person. Because, yeah, I would like to remove the manual work, but we still have to drive the car or the bus or take the train or whatever. But let's get out there and be there with the people and actually have the conversations and relationships.
This is this is not controversial for me. I totally agree, because I think it's so. This is a good way to end the podcast. These are so great insights, because what makes us humans are that we are humans, and that we can meet, and that we can see, exactly as you said. Because the more AI we're seeing, I totally agree, the more AI we're seeing, the more spam we're seeing. Like, look at ChatGPT. Everybody can write emails now and spam everybody, and everybody does, because it's not unique anymore. So you can, and I'll give you this, like, give it maybe 2 or 3 years or 5 years, you're going to be able to video prospect with AI. It's not even going to be you. So the only difference we're gonna have is face to face, like having a meeting and being humans, touching you on the shoulder, laughing together. I totally agree with you. I know that everybody doesn't. They think like AI is here. Let's get rid of salespeople. Let's do like one-touch buying, no marketing. It's like, no. I think if you're going down that path, at least as long as the robots don't take over the world and kill us all, I'm going to be human, and that's going to be my differentiator, as you said. Yeah. So I think with that, go all in on automation, go all in on AI, save 80% of the time, but the rest, the 20% you still have there, they need to be super valuable and super human. So I totally agree. Totally agree. Nice stuff. I'm super happy. Is there anything I've missed that I should have asked you about? Is there anything you want to add to the listeners that we haven't spoken about?
No, actually not. I think it's been great. I think a lot of good
me too.
Yeah.
Super interesting. And I hope for the listeners as well, this has been interesting, which I definitely think it has. So thank you again for your time, Lucaas. Where can we find you and your company? If basically we haven't said anything about what you do. So before we
No,
end, like TimeLog, give me the sell, like the pitch for TimeLog. What do you do, and what kind of companies do you help?
yeah. So TimeLog is a Danish software company. We've been around for 22 years. And what we basically do is that we provide a PSA software. And to make it into simple terms, what we do is that we help consultancy companies and architecture engineering to automate their way of working with their profitable projects and also non-profitable projects, and making sure that the invoicing and the management of those is smooth and easy in one platform, basically.
Nice.
Hmm?
Perfect. And where do we find you and your company?
I would say go to LinkedIn, look for TimeLog, or go to timelog.com, and then you will find us there. And otherwise, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to talk.
Cool. Great stuff. Perfect. All right. Thank you. I'm going to let you go. It's been a blast. And thank you for sharing everything. It's been super valuable. And yeah, have a great Christmas. Have a great New Year's. And let's make 2024 the year of humans.